First, take a look at these images. If I ask you right now whether you can directly use Ideogram 4 to create images like this, I think most of you would probably say no. The problem is that the truly effective way to use Ideogram 4 is not to write a normal natural language prompt. It is to use a JSON format prompt and describe every single thing very clearly. You need to write what the overall image is, what the background is, where the character is, where the product is, where the text goes, how large each element should be, and even what color each part should use. This is why, when different people use the same model, some people can create stunning posters, while others can only make an image that looks decent, but still feels like something is missing. The difference is not really the model. The difference is that you did not write the prompt clearly enough. So today, we're going to look at a tool made specifically to solve this problem. It comes from Kijai's KJNodes extension, and it is called Ideogram 4 Prompt Builder. It lets you use a visual interface to directly drag regions on a canvas, telling the model where the character should go, where the product should go, and where the text should go. Then it converts this visual information into a JSON prompt that Ideogram 4 can understand. All right, let's first talk about installation. This tool is inside Kijai's KJNodes extension. I think most of you are already very familiar with this extension, and you probably already have it installed. You only need to update it to the latest version. Here, let's also mention a small issue. If you previously used the official Comfui Ideogram 4 workflow, many of you may have felt that the generation quality was not very good. I also recommend updating Comfui to the latest version because it includes many fixes for the Ideogram 4 model. The generation quality is much better now. The overall workflow is actually quite simple because compared with a normal Ideogram 4 text-to-image workflow, the core modules have not changed much. On the left side, we still have model loading, including the conditional model, the unconditional model, the QWEL text encoder, the VAE, and the sampling settings. So where is the real change? Mainly in how the prompt is generated. Here we add one extra node called Ideogram 4 Prompt Builder. You'll notice that this control looks quite complicated. So let's first break down its basic structure. First, we have the canvas width and height. You can set this yourself, or if you upload a reference image, it will automatically detect the resolution of that image. Then we have the overall description. Below that is the background description. Further down, we choose the corresponding style. Here I selected photo. There are also other settings, such as camera language, lighting aesthetics, and visual design direction. Below that is the most important part, the canvas. We can draw many regions on top of it, inside each region. We can place either an object or text. If it is an object, you set the type to OBJ. If it is text, you set it to text. And if it is text, besides writing the prompt for that region, you also need to tell it exactly what the text is. This must be very accurate. Then this node will combine all of this information into a JSON prompt that Ideogram 4 can understand more easily. So the value of this tool is not that it creates prompts from nothing. It is more like translating your visual intention into structured language. Here, I'm only giving a quick overview of its overall function. Later, when we use it in real cases, I'll explain the specific features in more detail. But before we get into the actual examples, let's first talk about a habit that looks small, but is actually very important. When using Prompt Builder, try to upload a reference image, even if that image does not have much real reference value. I still recommend uploading one. Why? Because working on a canvas with a background image is much easier than facing a blank canvas. There is one point you must pay attention to. The aspect ratio of the reference image should ideally match the aspect ratio of the image you want to generate. If your reference image is vertical, but your final generated image is horizontal, the relationship between the regions will change. That is because the BBox is based on the canvas ratio. Once the ratio changes, the composition also changes. Next, let's use a few scenarios to explain how this tool should be used, or in what kinds of problems we should use it. Let's start with the first scenario. I call it prompt correction. What does that mean? Suppose we already used Gemini or another large language model to generate a JSON prompt. This JSON is not completely unusable. The image it generates has the right overall style, but there are some small issues. For example, in this case, the reference image is a real female subject standing in front of manga panel artwork. The image should be a complete vertical poster. I first used a prompt to generate a version of the JSON and then ran the image directly. Now look at the result. The manga background is actually pretty good. The black and white line art, panel composition, and English sound effect text are all there. But the character has a problem. She suddenly becomes two real person subjects, one in the lower left corner and one on the right side, and the positions of both people do not look like the main visual of a poster. At this point, you should not rush to completely throw away the entire prompt. Because the other parts are fine, the style is correct, and the background is correct. Only the main subject position is out of control. So what we need to do is very simple. We keep the overall prompt and only fix the position of the main character. How do we do that? Very simply, upload a reference image, then use the interactive canvas in Prompt Builder to draw the region where the character should appear. Pay attention here. The other input fields are not important in this case. What we need is the correct coordinate region. You can use the reference image as a guide and place the poster's main subject right in the visual center. Then we take the BBox coordinates from this region and replace the original coordinates in the JSON. Now we generate again. Look at the result. This time, the real person subject returns to the center of the image. The manga panel background is preserved. The character is no longer duplicated, and the layering between the character and the background is also very clear. This is a very practical use case for Prompt Builder. It does not always have to generate a prompt from scratch. More often, it can be used to correct a prompt, because in this situation, it is the most direct and effective solution. Now let's look at a more complete example. This example is even more typical. Look at this reference image. It is an exaggerated creative sprite poster. The character is sitting on top of a giant green can, and she is also holding a bottle of Sprite in her hand. The background is a highly saturated green with water splashes to emphasize a cool and refreshing feeling. So what is difficult about this image? The difficult part is not the character, and it is not the Sprite bottle either. The real difficulty is the creative structure. The character needs to sit on top of this huge can. The can is not a normal prop. It is an exaggerated main visual element. The glass bottle in the hand and the giant can below also need to exist at the same time. If you simply throw the reference image into a prompt generator, let it generate JSON, and then run the image directly, you can easily get a result like this. It does generate a green background, it does generate a character, and it does generate the bottle in the hand. But the most important thing in the reference image disappears. The huge metal can does not become the main visual of the image. A highly creative poster turns into a very ordinary image. So at this point, we need to use Prompt Builder to rebuild the structure. My method is still divided into several steps. First, I still use a large language model to generate a reference JSON prompt. Pay attention here. This generated prompt is not meant to directly generate the final image. Its purpose is to help me fill in information. When we talked about this control earlier, we mentioned that we need to write foreground prompts, background prompts, lighting aesthetics, and descriptions of design materials. Writing all of this manually is annoying. So we first let the large language model write a version for us and fill those parts in. Then we start drawing the regions. First, we draw the character region. The type of this region should be set to OBJ. We describe the character's sitting posture, outfit, and hand movement. Then we draw a large rectangular region to represent the metal can below. Here is a small trick. For this can, you do not need to write too many prompt words, because it is more like a compositional placeholder. The third region is the Sprite bottle held in the character's hand. This also needs to be written separately because it is not the same object as the giant can below. Finally, we adjust the overall color palette. Color is extremely important here. It is not enough to casually write green. Here, we can set not only a global color palette, but also local color palettes. If you feel that the character's clothing color is wrong or the jeans color is wrong, you can adjust it inside the local palette. Now look at the result. The giant can is back. The character is sitting on the can. There is also a bottle in her hand. The green background, metallic reflections, and water splashes are all there. This is not a problem that a normal prompt enhancer can solve. Essentially, this is a kind of composition reconstruction. This is where Prompt Builder's advantage really appears. You can break a complex image into several clear visual regions and then control them one by one. The third example is more about a composition mindset. Often, we are not simply trying to copy one image. We want to make something better than the original. For example, look at this image. It shows a woman sitting on top of giant letters. The background has tall buildings and sunset lighting. The image itself is already very beautiful. But if I want to reconstruct an image with Ideogram 4, I do not necessarily want to just copy it. I might keep the overall creative structure, but adjust it so it works better as a poster. For example, in the original image, the character is a bit small. The gold color of the character and the background blends together a little too much, so the subject does not stand out enough. The large letters are eye-catching, but the overall image feels slightly flat. I want the new image to have more impact, so we can make several adjustments. First, we keep the core idea of the huge good morning letters. Then we change the character from a gold outfit into a red dress, because a red dress stands out much more easily against the city glass background and the gold letters. Also, we move the character to the right side, allowing the body and the dress hem to form a vertical line. We keep the sunrise backlight, but make the background buildings cleaner, so the subject is not swallowed by too many building details. We also add some blue into the sky. Of course, the final result is not achieved in one try. We need to adjust it repeatedly. In the first version, we still imitate the original image as closely as possible. After we create that imitation, we then start adjusting it. One common problem here is that the global prompt may contain specific character descriptions, such as what clothes the person is wearing. If the prompt inside your drawn subregion also contains similar descriptions, the two can conflict. The final result may not be what you want. So here, I recommend that in the global prompt, you only write the overall structure, not the fine details. This makes later secondary creation more flexible and less likely to go wrong. Finally, let's summarize a few tips. First, always upload a reference image and make sure its aspect ratio matches the target aspect ratio. This is very important. Second, do not draw too many regions at the beginning. I recommend starting with the 2 or 3 most important ones, such as the character, the main product, and the text. After the overall structure is established, then you can add details. Third, separate objects and text clearly for objects. Use OBJ. For text, use text. If it is a text region, you must write exactly what the text should say. In the prompt, you should also clearly describe the font color, size, and overall feeling. Fourth, pay attention to the fact that there are 2 color palettes. One is the global palette, and the other is the local palette. If the whole image leans too much toward one color, the main subject can easily be swallowed by the background. At that point, you need to add a separate local palette. For example, in the sprite case, the background is green. I also want to remind everyone, do not treat Prompt Builder as an all-powerful tool. Its main purpose is to make your ideas concrete, not to replace you in writing prompts. All right, that's all for today. So what are you waiting for? Go try it yourself. Follow me and become someone who truly understands AI.